Tonight, a special bulletin on Israel's war on Palestine on its 13th day. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I'm Zahra Syed. In a developing story, Hamas's military wing says the group has released 2 U.S. captives for humanitarian reasons. The news comes as Israeli bombardment in Gaza continues for the 13th day. Since October 8th, Israeli forces have been targeting the Palestinian population and civilian infrastructure. At the time of writing, the Palestinian death toll has risen to 4,137. Half of those killed are children. In the latest, at least 18 displaced Palestinians are seeking refuge at the Church of St. Porphyrius in Gaza and have been killed. The church is the oldest church in Gaza and the 3rd oldest in the world. The attack has been condemned by Christian leaders in Palestine. In another incident, Israeli forces have killed 13 Palestinians, including 5 children. The death toll comes after a night raid in the Nur Shams refugee camp in the occupied West Bank city of Tulkarm. The United Nations Relief and Works agencies say 2 more of its personnel have died in the Gaza Strip. This brings the total number of UN relief workers killed in Israeli airstrikes to 16. The relief agency says killing UN staff and civilians is against international humanitarian law. The situation in Gaza has led to growing anger in the Arab and Muslim world, with large protests taking place in different regions. Israel's defense minister is hinting at a possible ground invasion. U.S. President Joe Biden says the priority is to bring American prisoners held by Hamas back home. Despite reports of the imminent entry of aid into Gaza, the timetable remains uncertain. This is because of the damage caused by Israeli bombardments at the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt. Repair work is underway. Israel says it is committed to eradicate Hamas from Gaza. Despite its claims of not targeting innocent civilians, it is committing grave atrocities against Palestinians. This includes Palestinians living in the occupied West Bank, where Hamas has no military influence. The region is becoming a hotbed of violence. Israeli settlers, emboldened by the chaos, have intensified their attacks on Palestinian homes, businesses, and people. The fear of settler violence has gripped Palestinian communities across the West Bank. At least 64 Palestinians, including children, have been killed by Israeli soldiers and settlers in just 12 days. In a Palestinian village surrounded by illegal Israeli settlements, a Jewish settler has shot dead a Palestinian man. The settler also attacked the village's mosque. In another village near the expanding Gilead settlement, settlers disguised as soldiers kidnapped a resident. A report shows that settler attacks have surged by 40% since the onset of Israel's war. It shows that settlers in the West Bank possess around 4,000 firearms. Due to the high number of violent incidents, many taxi drivers are refusing to commute through the West Bank. The daily lives of Palestinians living in the West Bank have been disrupted, as commuting now involves navigating rugged, unpaved routes. To make matters worse, the Israeli military has set up 567 checkpoints and obstructions across the West Bank. Many Palestinians fear that the current situation may escalate further as settlers gain more freedom. Palestinians are facing a continuous increase in movement restrictions. In the city of Hebron, all 70 checkpoints have been sealed. Political analysts believe that Israel may shift its focus to the West Bank once the Gaza conflict subsides. They say it is potentially a tactic to isolate Palestinian communities and to advance Israel's plans for annexation. Palestinians and Israeli activists say they have been physically assaulted, sexually humiliated, and tortured by Israeli soldiers and Jewish settlers in the West Bank village of Wadi al-Siq. According to an Israeli newspaper, Haaretz, the incident took place on October 12th. The Israeli Army's Desert Frontier Unit arrested 3 Palestinians and 3 activists. This Israeli Army unit reportedly includes members from the far-right settler group Hilltop Youth. The newspaper reports that Palestinians were subject to degrading treatment. Their clothes were stripped off and they were photographed naked. It also says Israeli forces allegedly urinated on 2 of the captives and burnt them with cigarettes. The Palestinians were eventually released in the evening. The Israeli government has initiated an investigation into the incident and has dismissed one of the commanders. A group of left-wing Israeli activists who arrived at the scene on the same day was also attacked and held for several hours. The victims say that it was difficult to distinguish them between settlers and soldiers. They were blindfolded, bound, and subject to physical abuse in an empty building. The violence allegedly included beatings, the use of knives, and other forms of torture. The victims believe that their activism in supporting local communities in the area made them targets for the severe abuse. President Joe Biden has announced his intention to seek an urgent budget request from Congress to bolster the security needs of both Israel and Ukraine. In an Oval Office address, Biden said that the additional financial support for Israel and Ukraine is a smart investment. He says the investment will benefit future generations in the U.S. He says the security assistance will play a crucial role in keeping American troops out of harm. In the speech, President Biden has drawn parallels between Israel's war and 9/11 attacks. He says Israel should not let anger dictate the war. Instead, he says Israel should seek justice and avoid mistakes. Biden also says that Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. He says the U.S. is committed to the self-determination of the Palestinian people. President Biden says he will hold the Iranian regime accountable for its support to Russia and Hamas. In related news, California Governor Gavin Newsom has announced his plans to travel to Israel to meet the victims of the Hamas attack. During his visit, he will offer California's support to those affected by the attacks. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is facing calls to clarify Canada's position regarding this recent strike at Al Ahli Hospital in Gaza City. 3 prominent Jewish groups and the members of the Conservative Party are demanding that he publicly deny Israel's involvement in the incident. The news comes after earlier this week, an Israeli airstrike hit a Gaza hospital, resulting in hundreds of casualties. World condemnation poured in, with many calling the attack a grave war crime. Trudeau briefly addressed the hospital attack and called the targeting of the hospital, quote, absolutely unacceptable. However, Israel's military quickly denied the involvement, attributing the incident to a misfire by the Palestinian militants. Trudeau later expressed his horror at the deaths. He called for a thorough investigation to determine how the attack occurred. U.S. President Joe Biden has sided with Israel. Biden says data from the U.S. Defense Department shows that Israel is not behind the attack. With the backing of the U.S., Israel's ambassador to Canada is urging Canada to offer a similar response. However, Trudeau said yesterday that Canada would take the necessary time to investigate the blast. Canadian politicians are also calling for a ceasefire. Ottawa has not yet commented on the matter. Thank you for watching. Our news is produced by Muslim Network TV, which is a not-for-profit organization. We need your support for donations. Please scan the QR code on our broadcast or visit muslimnetwork.tv to donate now, so we can continue to amplify the voices of Muslims in Canada and abroad. Assalamu alaikum.